The news coming out of the fourth is a lot as we are 2 weeks out from the start of training camp in the National Football League. As we always do, we start the program off with Big Sills. Hope all of you had a great 4th of July, family and fireworks. Man, my favorite time and my favorite holidays is when you don't do shit. You sit on your ass, you go swimming, you do nothing, and you don't worry about anything. You don't worry about the things in the world going on. Holidays afford you that. You get away from the real world, and here we are back Monday fighting the world once again together. So we appreciate it. We know that you guys have numerous options. And as I said, we are 2 weeks away. How about this? The Texans are 9 days away. They're 9 days away from the start of training camp. I think they report on the 17th. Holy cow, we are right here, man. Saw pictures of Dak Prescott in a walking boot. Reports are today he has it off. Can't think he's going to be ready for the start of training camp. Can you? Cowboys are in such a dilemma with that guy. $60 million? Look, man, I don't think they're moving off that guy. But still, Cowboy drama during the offseason. Where else would you get it but in Dallas? Xander will join us at 3:30, and then Angelo Cataldi will join us. He's going to come off the top rope on Howard Eskin, WIP, the Eagles. His comments on some of the storylines about Hurts this offseason. Lots of stuff to hit on here. So we appreciate it. By the way, we always try to get to 200 likes. Please do me a favor. Okay? Hit the like button. Thank you again. Daniel says, happy football Monday, Big Sills. Truth, justice, and the Big Sills way. Almost football season. Love your work. Love listening. Daniel Paisan, thank you very much for coming aboard. We appreciate it. We got a ton of shit to hit on, too. We do. Ton of stuff, man. I appreciate that, Daniel. That's awesome. And as the season starts to get closer, all the people that stuck with us in the offseason, you know, when you have those highs and lows a little bit in sports talk, I've been doing this now for 34 years. You know, you go through those ways. Football season. I tell Xander this all the time. Anybody could do a sports show during the football season and in the fall. But what you guys did was you guys gave us content the entire year. Now, look, this is not a traditional 24/7 football show. We talk about everything. You guys know that. We talk about everything. I talk sports, and I was a sports talk host for 25, 26 years doing morning drive. So it's kind of not just an all football show, but you guys keep it rolling, man. So many storylines. Got it, man. And we so appreciate it. You know, I want to first start it out here. By the way, Big Sills and my Eagle random thoughts as we're 2 weeks to camp. I do want to start with something here, and I got to bring this up here. And I want to bring this up because I read this. By the way, does anybody know who Chris Carlin is? Do you guys know who Chris Carlin is? Says that he works for ESPN. Do you know who Chris Carlin is? Like, I don't, he's like a WFAN guy. That name, it kind of sounds familiar that way. Right? Who's Chris Carlin? Now, I don't know where he got this from, but it led me to think about something as you go forward here. I know why I woke up with morning wood. 5 days of Dan. I don't know how to take that. Never heard of him, says Tony. I'm with you, Tony. I've never heard of the guy. Now, and I never heard of the guy, but here, let me read this to you. You guys ever hear the Philadelphia Eagles Central? I don't know, Xander, is it a credible site? Because, you know, nowadays, you really don't know what you're reading sometimes. Some of these sites are credible. Some people have a pretty good reputation. Some people have no reputation. He used to be at FAN, says Tony. Okay. He's a WFAN guy. So here's what he said about Jalen Hurts. Jalen Hurts has got a problem here, and it's not stuff on the field. And way to be late to the table here. I worked in Philadelphia. He did. Did he work at IP or over at 97.5? I've never heard of the guy. I know the town pretty well. Okay. There were some things going on there with Jalen Hurts in the locker room in terms of guys not loving how he handled himself after they went to the Super Bowl and after he got paid. Is that true? I don't. I can't put a. And look, I'm critical of Jalen, and I'm like, did Jalen have a problem with teammates after he got paid, and how he conducted himself after? There's some fences for Jalen Hurts to mend in the locker room. The talent level is fantastic. This is a backhanded slap. I worry about that being a situation that can blow up at any moment. And think if it does, it's going to get ugly. ESPN's Chris Carlin on Jalen Hurts. Does that Eagle locker room have a persona that it's mentally weak? How do you take that? That's a guy's perspective that says that he worked in this town. It says that Jalen Hurts. Now, again, he's such a young player. Look, I'm not making excuses up here. And I'll show you where I'm going here. Okay? Sills, he was with WFAN. Thank you, Kyle. I'm going to ask a question here in a second. Okay? Guys looking for clicks. I don't look at the Eagle locker room being that weak. I look at poor coaching a year ago that was an issue. And people not having the answers to get them out of issues where they could right the ship. And the players went down with it. But when I look at those players, do I think that they look at it and go, wow, Jalen's an asshole? I don't look at them as being a soft football team. I look at the Miami Dolphins as being a soft team. I mean, do you question the entire character of the football team? You can after the 1-7 letdown. And there's something to that. And Dark Universe says it right. Lane Johnson says, we all love and respect Jalen Hurts. He did say that recently. So Dark Universe, this is where I'm going with this. Does Hurts really have to mend fences with teammates? Or is this just an organizational and fan thing? And what I'm going to lay out to you, were you guys critical of Donovan McNabb? And were the Philly sports media critical of Donovan McNabb? Yes or no? Were they? Were they critical of his leadership? Of McNabb's? Some of you can be still a Donovan fan. Okay? You can be a Donovan. I'm just asking you, did you question his leadership at times? Yes, says Dark Universe. McNabb never won the big one. I think so, Sil, says Kyle. Thank you, Robert. Were you guys critical and were people critical of Donovan McNabb's leadership? I'm showing you where I'm going to go here with this. Because you know what? You have a track record of this. Flexen goes, I did. Okay. Did you question Carson Wentz's leadership? Did you question his leadership? Definitely, I believe so, says Tony. I was very critical, says Flexen. Okay. We okay. Wentz was too. Joe goes, yep. Sills, is this a rhetorical question? Nice. Philly 4x4. Yeah. Flexen goes, yes. You guys questioned his leadership, right? Okay. When you guys ended up trading Nick Foles to the Rams, Were you questioning him and his leadership? Not the second time back when he took over as a substitute teacher, but when you dealt him to the Rams. Okay, Mike says Wentz couldn't handle the Philly media. So now we have McNabb and Wentz. People had critical thoughts on leadership. So when they sent Nick Foles away the first time, you guys had Sam Bradford. Okay? No. Dark Universe. He wasn't a true leader the first time you dealt him away. That's not true. You're looking at the second reincarnation of Foles when you had him on the football team. Absolutely not true, dude. Why'd you send him away then? He couldn't win the big one. You questioned his leadership on driving the team across the finish line. Why did you deal him to the Rams then? Remember something. He left twice. You forgot that. You've erased that one first round when they moved him. You forgot that because he won the Super Bowl the second round. You forgot that. So you were critical of Foles even. Hey, don't deny it. Dark Universe goes, I meant round 2. I know you did, and I get it. Were you guys critical of Michael Vick? Hey, you guys in here, some of you have a short-term memory loss issue. You dealt Foles because you thought he couldn't win the big one. And you forget round 1. You dealt him to the Rams and you had Sam Bradford. Were the Eagle media and people critical of Vic? Yes or no? In his leadership abilities. Flexing goes out was very critical of Vic. Chip did. Okay. Yes. And now here we are with Hurts. You've questioned every single quarterback that you've had pretty much since 2000 in their leadership issues. Every one of them sucked? Really? The media, the organization. Is this an organizational thing? The organization had to question it too because they moved off him. All these guys. Look at the trend you have here in your quarterbacks. When we talked about leadership, we should package every quarterback except Patrick Mahomes. They all struggle with leadership. Yeah, but in Philly, it looks like the last 4 guys that you've questioned their leadership abilities. Now, there's some scuttle about Jalen Hurts' leadership. You think this is by coincidence? That every one of your quarterbacks, when they go through a little small downturn, by the way, it's not a debate whether he'll bounce. I'm talking about you and the media and the front office. Here's the problem that you have and why you can't develop a decent quarterback. Because the front office panics. Let's think about something here. Okay? Andy Reid has done more for the modern day Philadelphia Eagles and how you operate more so than any man, any general manager, Joe Banner, Howie Roseman. There is nobody since Dick Vermeil that has done more for the culture of the Eagles than Andy Reid. Everything you operate under right now was installed by Reid and his organization in the early 2000s. Do we not agree? Howie's a benefactor of that. But the one thing that Howie and the organization aren't are football people. They pretend they are. This is why they struggle in developing quarterbacks. Every single quarterback that you've had since McNabb, Wentz, Vic, Foles, and now Hurts, the organization doesn't have the patience to sit and develop. They'll constantly bring in new coaches, new coordinators, and try and reinvent the wheel every year. This is the frustration that you have. Get this. I thought about this. So I went back and looked, and I went back and read columns in the Philadelphia Inquirer. Every single quarterback that you've had since McNabb, his leadership has been questioned. Shit, you guys forgot about Nick Foles round one on how you questioned his leadership. It's why you dealt him to the Rams and Bradford came into Philly. You forgot that. He was sent out of town because many of you thought he couldn't win the big one. Carson Wentz, guy was playing well, has an issue. They change coaches. They don't give him the proper personnel. Leadership issue. All of a sudden, now get this. So really, was it Carson Wentz in the locker room that was really an asshole when every one of the quarterbacks that they have had since they've been together in 2000 as an organization, they've questioned every one of these guys? This is not by coincidence. This is the trend. Now it's Hurts' turn. You know, it's funny. Every one of these quarterbacks have had the highest of highs and the lowest of lows. McNabb gets a team to the Super Bowl, arguably your greatest quarterback in the history. You know, you could even go back to Cunningham. Now, Cunningham wasn't under, I don't believe, Jeffrey Lurie. But you can go back to Cunningham and how you were critical of him and his leadership. That organization, since Randall, has questioned the quarterback leadership for 30 years. Jalen Hurts is a product of an environment of constantly being overcritical and not being patient in developing of the player. How can you develop Jalen Hurts when you've had hey, Kellen Moore might be a fine coach and he might be a fine coordinator. But again, you've ripped up the page and he's starting over again, just in play calling language alone. You know, I'm at the holidays and I'm thinking, let's take a look at the last 5-6 quarterbacks they have here, how they've treated them and how they've developed them. It's been a carbon copy. It's the same process. You guys have the same process. Am I wrong? You get this. You guys have had the highest of highs when it comes to loving a quarterback and the lowest of lows when it comes to your quarterback. Now you're questioning Hurts. Look, maybe Reuben Franks is right. This ain't a leadership issue. This is more of a turnover issue and the lack of patience by the organization. Has Saban ever developed any quarterbacks? Flexing. He doesn't have to when he's won 7 national titles. College and pro are different. College coaches aren't there to set you up for the next level. That's the mistake John Calipari had. John Calipari said, look at all the millionaires that we've made for the NBA. Yeah, you won 1 national title and completely underachieved. Look at the great college programs that have had great basketball programs. Name me a guy off the Indiana Hoosiers basketball program under Bob Knight outside of Isaiah Thomas that was a superstar player. Can you name me one? He didn't send guys to the NBA. How about Krzyzewski? What, Grant Hill? Okay. Kyrie Irving played 2 games for him. Name me another guy. How many Duke superstars in 40 years did he put in the league? Okay? Some of these coaches don't look at Nebraska back in the day. Nebraska didn't put superstars in the NFL. It was a football program. Sales boardroom guys do not understand the importance of working through your struggles. They don't want growth. That's why Howie succeeds in free agency. He succeeds at finding the right finished product. Correct. Because you know why? He doesn't have the patience, like you're saying, Bob, to develop. That's why you don't develop any. Hey, get this. John McMullen said this perfectly with Xander the other day. Do you know why he hit a grand slam with Devontae Smith? He was already a finished product. They didn't have to do any developing. When's the last wide receiver you developed? That was great. I can't remember. In 20 years, Deshaun Jackson, okay. Macklin, kind of. I wouldn't put him as an elite receiver. Those guys aren't elite. That's right. That organization right there is exactly what I'm talking about. Okay? Prince, this is exactly what I'm talking about on the frustration that you guys have when it comes to talking about Jalen Hurts. This is not a Jalen Hurts issue. This is a massive front office problem that they have that, get this, they lose their patience, and it's clearly why they don't win. And I'm talking postseason winning. Queasy Dropkins, Xander. I mean, you question McNabb, you question Wentz, you question Vic, you question Foles round one, and now you're questioning Hurts. This is all since 2000. Every one of these guys have been your franchise quarterback. Every one of these guys, two of them, three of them have helped you get to Super Bowls. Wentz, McNabb, and Hurts. And you still questioned it. Dan says Jalen is not that dude. I'm not really talking about that right now, Dan. I'm talking about how maybe he's not. Dan, maybe he's not. But I'm not sure we'll ever know. Prince goes, Howie has to be praised. For what? Prince, what are you praising him for? Underachieving? My God. I mean, there's so many things you do right as an organization, and there's so many things you do absolutely wrong as an organization. You don't have enough football people in the right positions. You have glorified CPAs and bookworms and librarians in your front office, and it shows. What could they? It's like, when you're an athlete and you go to a doctor and he says you're morbidly obese and you're 275 pounds and you got 10% body fat, but he still calls you obese, you're like, well, you're not a sports doctor. What would you know? You deal with people in the band. What would you know about how to treat an athlete? Hey, doctors for athletes are completely different than normal civilians, doctors. Completely different. Completely different. Okay? Hate how some of these fans praise pussy-ass Howie. Listen, Howie does a lot of great stuff. But here's the one thing, Bruce, okay? I don't know why that organization doesn't stick to what he does great and make him even greater at what he does. And leave the football stuff to people who understand it more. Do you really think that guy knows how to develop a quarterback? Well, if that was the case, Howie, you wouldn't be having this revolving door since 2000. Hey, let's do this one. Did Donovan McNabb live up to all the expectations in his ability as a quarterback in Philadelphia under the Eagle management? Did he live up to his ability and his talent level? Yes or no? Did he live up to it? What would you say? Boy, I'll tell you what, early Donovan McNabb, when he first got in the league, I thought he was sensational. Okay? Tony says no way. Dan, I hear that every year. He still can't. I got it. I know all that. Bruce says he did. 215 goes 50-50. Kyle says somewhat. I don't know. I just remember him losing out against the D-Jacks. Taking us to a Super Bowl and winning it is two different things. Kimberly, thank you, my friend. I appreciate that. Look at you guys, somewhat. Are you suggesting that Howie told Andy Reid how to develop McNabb? I'm telling you, Howie Roseman had nothing to do with how Andy Reid. I just got through saying this. Absolutely not. Slagger, I'm telling you, everything you are right now is because of what Andy Reid did back in the day. Nothing Howie did. He's a benefactor. The man who changed the culture in Philadelphia Eagles football history are two men in the last 50 years. Dick Vermeil and Andy Reid. The rest of them have been benefactors from what he's done. Doug Peterson is an Andy Reid guy too. You think there's any coincidence to that? I mean, Andy didn't win you the Super Bowl, but one of his proteges did. You think there was any coincidence to that? When the owner wanted to hire somebody, he wanted to hire somebody in the image of Andy. Doug Peterson is a reflection of Andy Reid, not of Howie Roseman or the organization. Well, in a way he is, because it's Andy's organization. Hey, how about this? You think Wentz lived up to his potential? No. Now, Vic is different because of the circumstances he had coming out of prison. So he's not fair. When you drafted Foles, you think Foles lived up to his? Foles is the prime example of your inconsistency. You thought he sucked. You brought him back. He stepped in for you, won the biggest game in franchise history. Then you made the poor decision again and dealt him. Sills, you're trying to tell me you would have kept Foles over Wentz? Probably not. Probably not. But I'll tell you what, that conversation would have been a little bit more entailed. I saw a guy get my team to a divisional game 2 years in a row. You want to hear something? Nick Foles led the Philadelphia Eagles to 2 divisional round games. 1 year, he won the NFC title and then the Super Bowl and the MVP in the game. Prescott in his 10 years has never done that. Gotten to a second round like that. Think about that. Foles did more in 2 years than what Prescott did in his entire career. And you guys moved off him. Moved off him. Foles was not durable. Okay. Hey, by the way, I'm just saying every one of these guys you guys have criticized, most notably on their leadership capabilities. Totally. Sills Laurie is a movie guy, and he loves publicity and grand openings. He runs this team the same way. It's about making splash and getting the media to say nice things so they are and put butts in the seats. Bob, I know. This Howard Eskin story is one of the biggest stories in Philadelphia sports right now. It's quite amusing. Angelo Cataldi will be with us at 4:30. I can't wait to listen to him. One thing also about that, to show you that, once again, Bob Lang and his henchmen over there at the NovaCare Center with the Eagles, and they are henchmen. You know what they do? How could you be critical? Say there's some drama this year with Nick, and there's some internal drama. How could WIP be critical of the Eagles when they don't even conversation about their own things that are going on in their own station? How can you not be a hypocrite? Well, the Eagles aren't speaking. Neither are you. I'm not talking about right or wrong here, sexual harassment. I'm talking about nothing. You don't address your own controversies? Well, you're the Eagles. So anything that they say, you now take with a grain of salt of the mouthpiece of the Eagles. Like I've been telling you, there is the prime example of it. The Philadelphia Eagles and the station known as WIP work hand in hand to fool you. You know, first they say they suspended. Or no, they punished Howard, but then they didn't suspend him. Which is it? I'm confused. Did you punish him? You didn't suspend him. I'm not quite sure what you're talking about. I'm not sure what you're saying. The Eagle organization doesn't know how to read the room. Building a statue of a backup quarterback while your franchise quarterback is still on the team. Eagles. It's a great take. It's a great take. They do what's in the best interest of their own view of the team, not the players on the team. You're right. If I've got a guy that I just gave a max deal to, and the backup quarterback went in and won a game for me, you know what that would be like doing, Prince? That the Cleveland Cavaliers would make a statue of Kyrie Irving out front of that arena because he hit the game-winning shot that won the NBA title and not have one of LeBron. You think that rubbed LeBron wrong? Well, the guy made the clutch shot. That's still not going to go well with my guys in my locker room. Absolutely. They don't look at that. They look at coaches and players as widgets. Look at how you've treated your quarterbacks. And get this, the PR department, the propaganda machine, led by Bob Lang, doesn't do anything to protect these guys. They just throw them out there. McNabb, Wentz, Foles, Hurts. It's the same shit. Just a different year. Nothing changes. Sills, the guy's not, he can't read. I'm not even debating that. I'm talking about how you handle the guys that are in the most important position on your football team. I'm not saying you have to carry these guys with kid gloves. You're paying them, like Xander says, $50 million a year. Suck it up, guy. I get it. But when your organization is not helping you and you've got a trend of talking shit to your quarterback, the face of your franchise, how can you ever be the face of your franchise when the organization doesn't want him to be the face of the franchise? They didn't want McNabb, Wentz, Foles. So guess what they do to Carson Wentz? They draft Hurts, then they build a statue out front of the place. I don't know. You might not think that's a good move. Hurts have a leadership issue. You know what? I'm going to bring this up with Angelo at 4:30 and with Xander at this is a trend. You do this to every one of your guys. I mean, I don't think there's a coincidence to it. They drafted Hurts because of the constant injuries and poor backup quarterbacks on the roster. In the second round, you got Foles like in the 4th or 6th or whatever you got him. In the second? Right? Hey, man. This is an organizational thing once again. Every single one of your guys. Foles was a 3rd That's a big pick. That's a big draft pick. I don't understand. There was a Super Bowl drought. Folks beat Brady. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking when you dumped his ass round one. You forget you traded him for Sam Bradford. Your so-called statue hero. You traded him for Sam Bradford. Because you didn't think he was a winner. You keep forgetting that. Sam Bradford. The guy who hijacked. Bradford had more upside than Foles. Foles won the Super Bowl. What's Bradford's upside? What was his upside? I missed it. Robbing organizations of money? Number 1 overall pick. Congratulations. That had nothing to do with his career. That's right. Yeah, he was a bum. Upside. You said that Sam Bradford had more upside than Foles. And Foles will be able to walk around the city of Philadelphia with a Super Bowl ring and an MVP ring and an MVP car he was given and a statue out front of Lincoln Financial, and Bradford had more upside. Sam Bradford or Nick Foles, who are you taking? One of these guys in here says Bradford. I've never seen a guy steal more money in my life. Maybe that guy, Brock Osweiler. Both those guys, when they went into organizations, they didn't even need a gun. They just stole. Sam Busford. You traded Nick Foles, your future MVP and statue up front of your building, for Sam Bradford. Yeah, it's quite a testament. What happened the first time around, Nick? You were an all-pro. Yeah, they didn't think I could win. Didn't you throw for 26 touchdowns and 2 picks? Yeah. They didn't want to stick with me, though. They moved away from me, sent me to the Rams, where that coach killer Jeff Fisher was. Shit, who was on that team? I mean, hey, did they have like, I don't want to, it wasn't Kirk Cousins. They had somebody else on that team, that Rams team, that ended up winning some playoff games too. And yeah, they had a coach killer or a quarterback killer. Jeff Fisher was in the building. Hindsight? Ben, I'm not talking about hindsight. I'm talking about how you've dumped on every guy since McNabb, and now you're questioning Hurts' leadership. Hindsight? I'm talking about the present with Hurts. You're missing the conversation, bro. This isn't a Nick Foles conversation. This is a conversation about why are you questioning another guy? You know why? It's an innate thing you do. The Eagles have an innate inability to stand and try to develop coaches or quarterbacks. You don't develop quarterbacks. Name me one fucking quarterback you've developed in 24 years. None. 0. And you've ripped them all. McNabb, Wentz, Vic, Foles, Hurts now. That's the conversation. Hey, Prince, you're right. This ain't a Hurts thing. This is an Eagle thing. There lies your problem. Some of you go like this. Well, Hurts ain't the guy. How do you know? How do you know? Let me put it to you this way. Well, if they would have put the talent around Carson Wentz that they put around Hurts, you think his chances of succeeding would be bigger and better? If he had Saquon Barkley and A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith and an offensive line like he had, do you think the chances of him turning his career around would have been a little better at least? Or no? Or do you want to just cast an indictment? You know why? I could cast an indictment on the last 5 quarterbacks you've had. Oh, I see. How about this? What do you think if McNabb had all the talent that Hurts has right now and they put that talent around him? You think he'd be okay too? How about if Nick had all that talent? Wentz was brain dead. How do you know? Okay, Mike, not to relitigate this. How do you have a 4,000-yard passing season and not one wide receiver over 500 yards receiving? How do you know? Thank you, Kyle. Case Keenum. He won some ball games. Wait a minute. 11 says, Sills, I disagree. This time's different. No, it's not. They're questioning his leadership now, the media. Some people in the organization are saying they're a little bit upset with Hurts. Did I miss that? That's Jeff McClain's words, not mine. Those were Jeff McClain's words. How would I know? These people don't talk to me. They only talk to my bosses. Okay? How do I don't know. The roster looks good now, but it's important to remember that Wentz didn't receive enough support and there were mistakes in the draft picks in an attempt to outsmart everyone in the room. Correct. Made colossal mistakes. Edge rushers, corners, linebackers. The defense was constantly a revolving door, and it's been since 17. The one thing you got to give him credit for, and I do agree with everyone that says this, how he makes a mistake in the draft, he goes into free agency and he plugs the dike. Okay, yes, I'd rather have him do that than go back into the draft and keep taking swings at shit he can't do. You know, he's taking a big gamble here with these corners. This is something he's not good at. Now, it looks like these two guys could be good. It's just a wait and see. I don't know. It's the biggest fail rate, corners, in the last 20 years is corners at 64%. And when you add the fact that the Eagles have been awful at it, you have to expedite that a little to up to 70%. There's a 70% chance these corners fail. You watch Kenny Pickett will replace Jalen Hurts, just like Jalen replaced Carson Wentz. Then they will draft another quarterback to replace Pickett. And you're on the same revolving door you've been since 2000. And then here we are again. This has been the topic right here. That's exactly right, disciple. That's the topic. You got it. It's a revolving conversation. And it's a 25-year conversation. So when you guys say Hurts is going to turn it around, you have no history of turning any of your quarterbacks around. But Jalen's going to be the one? I don't believe it. The only reason McNabb lasted as long as he did was because Reed was in charge. Once the organization when Andy Reid left, authority in the locker room left and went upstairs. That's why Doug was fired. Jeffrey Lurie grabbed control of his organization when Andy Reid. What year was Andy Reid fired? What year was he fired? Was that 17? No. 12? What year was he fired? I forget. 12, 13, something like that? That he was 13, right? He was fired 12, 13, somewhere in there. Well, ever since 2013, the ownership group has taken complete control of the organization. And look at the quarterback since 13. Every one of those guys are on the same conveyor belt. And Xander said this about 3 months ago. It looks eerily the same as what they did with Wentz, what they're doing with Hurts. You know why, Xander? Because it is. It's the same. Hey, Charlie, could you imagine Michael Vick with the talent on the team right now? Holy cow. Yeah, I don't know. um, hey, I don't know. Seals the Eagles want their front office to be the face of the franchise, and it is. How he's the face of the franchise? Hey, that's a great question. Bob, who do you think the face of the franchise is? Howie Roseman or Jalen Hurts? Who do you think the face of the franchise right now? Who would you say? Who do you think the face of the franchise? And by the way, I saw Jason Kelsey was asked again today about his confidence in Jalen Hurts. Why is that even a question? Sill's absolutely correct. If Foles had this offensive talent, he would have probably won the second Super Bowl instead of Jeffries not catching the ball. Ace, I'll tell you that all the time. Catches that football in New Orleans. My conversation about keeping him over Wentz would have been a hard one because I don't know how you move off a guy who got your football team to 2 straight NFC championships. God forbid he would have put that team in the Super Bowl again. I mean, he was a catch away late in that game against New Orleans. He catches that football. He's in the NFC title game again. You're moving off that? I don't know. I don't know. If Jalen had a bad year, if Jalen plays bad this year, I agree. But for now, he's earned another shot. Absolutely. Moving off him. The money alone, you're not moving off him. It's not the point. That's not my point I'm making here. It's a conveyor belt of the same stuff, just a different quarterback. Sills, when Reed was fired, they gave Chip Kelly control immediately afterwards. Ownership has been hungry for control since Chip. Yeah, okay, Marshall, you're right. You're right. Chip got complete control because the Buccaneers didn't want to give it to him. That's why he didn't get that Buck job, and they gave it to Greg Schiano. And he went back another year at Oregon. And then the Eagles ended up giving him the complete keys to the shop there at NovaCare. You're right. And then after year 3, somewhere in there, they started taking some of the power away and stripping him down a little bit. That's a true statement. You're right. That's a true statement. I completely agree. Okay. The media is on an all-out Hurts. Zaner, I'd like to get that up. Prince, thank you. Prince, am I wrong, Prince, what I'm saying here? Prince, am I wrong here that this has just been just a different quarterback, just a different year, just a different thing, but it's the same result in how they treat everyone, right? Sills, when Reed was fired, they gave Chip complete control immediately afterwards. Ownership has been hungry for control since Chip. Nate, that's right. You're right. You're dead right with that. Totally right. Okay? Totally. But Nick throws up prayers. Okay? So what's the definition of insanity? Roseman and the Eagles doing the same shit over and over. Dude, there's no way you should have lost that 22 Super Bowl. There's just no way. But that's not part of this conversation, though. They will get rid of Jalen before Sirianni. That's a great comment. That's a great comment. Who do they get rid of first? Who means more? Hey, John, thank you very much. It's a great topic. Who means more to Nick? I mean, who means more to the owner and the GM, Nick or Jalen? Shit, you've dealt all these quarterbacks in the past. Who means more to ownership in the front office? The head coach? What if Jalen does this? He kind of plays well. It's super great. and they get to a second round. And Nick's righted the ship, and it looked good. But you start realizing Hurts, he's not the guy. Will they keep Nick? Fire Nick? Or will they move off of, or try to begin the process of moving off of Jalen? You've moved off of Wentz, Foles. You've done it in the past. Now you've done it in the past moving off of coaches too. But who means more to them? Dude, nobody in their right mind keeps their job after that kind of display of coaching last year. Some go like this. Look at Nick's record. How about looking at Nick's behavior? Does that guy pass? Here, Xander's right. Sills, when you look at the resume and you look at that on paper and you don't watch the man on the sidelines every Sunday, you look at the paper and go, you're crazy. But when you watch the man operate, you watch the man at press conferences, does that guy pass the eyeball test that he knows what he's doing? Just a question. How about this? If I put that guy in front of a microphone and had him talk and you didn't know his resume, would you hire Nick Sirianni as your head football coach? Does that guy exude confidence that you would hand your team over to him? You didn't know his resume. And now he's been 3 years in, going on 4. Does that guy pass the eyeball test? Well, Sills, he'll get an interview. Okay. If I didn't look at that resume and he talked to me, I'd be like, I don't feel confident with this guy. How come that doesn't match up? When I watch Belichick talk and I look at Bill's resume, it matches up. Beat him shit. It's about the team. I don't know you dick. This is what I've done. This is how it is and what we need to be great. I mean, you're right, Xander. On paper, it's kind of like the Eagle team. On paper, looks good. But when you put the eyeball test to it, you're like, something's missing. Something's missing. Seals, can you imagine Tom Landry and Don Shula looking at that dope Sirianni popping his arms on the sidelines? Hey, look, you don't have to be a stoic guy in a top hat. But the one thing Coach Landry did, he had a way of doing shit. He modified it all the time. But I'll tell you one thing that he did do. He had patience and poise. I think that's a character that you have to have when you're a great head coach. You have to have belief. I told you the story before about Jimmy Johnson in the 1-15 season. They were getting their ass handed to them. Dave Wannstedt comes to him and goes, don't you think we should go to the 34? Everybody's running it. You know what Jimmy said? Nah, we're going to do it my way. I believe in it. This is what we're going to do. And we're going to do it this way. Won 3 Super Bowls in the next 4 years. And get this. Had the poise and patience with Aikman. Do you know that Troy Aikman was Jimmy Johnson's toughest player to coach? It wasn't Michael Irvin. It wasn't Charles Haley. It wasn't Dexter Manley. It wasn't Jason Taylor. Zach Thomas. It wasn't Nate Newton. It was Troy Aikman. You know why? Why do you think Aikman was the toughest player for Jimmy Johnson to coach? Both players have come a long way. Jimmy and Troy have come a long way. Okay? You know how? Well, Troy Aikman was supposed to go to Oklahoma State. said no. After he got hurt, he was going to transfer to Miami. He said no. Went to UCLA. When Jimmy took the Cowboys over, they were taking him no matter what. Remember, you don't have a choice to say no. And then they drafted what? Steve Walsh. Then they went back and forth after Aikman got hurt and Bernie Kosar won a couple playoff games. Then they put Steve Berline in. And they weren't going to put Aikman back in. Players went to coach and went, you got to put him in. Jimmy's like, I'm not messing around with anything. Troy Aikman and him didn't speak for an entire year. Finally, Jimmy went to him and said, you're my guy. And they went on to win Super Bowls. But you know what they did? They mended fences. And they ended up coming to some type of agreement. And they had the patience with one another. The same thing that Brady and Belichick had in New England. You have to have that patience. Eagles don't have it. Okay? They don't have it with their quarterbacks. Look at your history. I'll never forget. Again, I was during the holidays. Xander said it. I don't know, Xander, what was it, about 2 months ago you said this? Doesn't it look like the same thing they're doing to Hurts that they did with Wentz? It just kind of eerily looks the same. Well, it is. Because they did it with every other guy they've had. I don't think there's a coincidence to that. Lord Vaughn goes, I blame the fans and media for organization's lack of patience. Hey, Lord Vaughn, if you're running your football team based on what the fans want and based on what the media wants, you'll never win. And I highly doubt that. But then again, the propaganda machine over there at NovaCare was hard at work this past week with this whole Howard Eskin thing. They exposed themselves. Not to go down that road, but they exposed themselves. They finally showed you who WIP is. We're going to punish Howard Eskin. Oh, okay. You suspended him? No. Okay. Have the Eagles fired him from being a sideline reporter when the Sixers and the Phillies don't want him at their own facility for his conduct? In a cancel culture, which I don't believe in, the Eagles didn't. Hey, by the way, they celebrated Pride last month. They celebrate Me Too. They celebrate No More. Do you celebrate sexual assault? Or do you not? Or are you against it? Or what? I'm confused. I know people in this business who have been fired for less, trust me. So wait. Guy says something on the air, that is a fireable offense. Guy sexually harasses somebody and kicked out of 3 different franchises. 2, to be fair. That's not a fireable offense. I don't know. Ain't my actions. Looking the other way regarding sexual assault. Where else have we seen that? I'm just saying. So the Eagles embrace sexual harassment until further noted. Little off topic, but this is why Doug hasn't even seen his statue in Philly yet. He does not like the way ownership runs the organization, did him dirty after the Super Bowl win, Big Sills. Hey, John, I appreciate that very much. I thought he saw it last year in the rain when they came up and played in the rain. I thought he saw the statue out front. I thought he saw that. I may be mistaken, John. As Buddy would say, if you listen to the fans, you'll be sitting up there with them. I like that, disciple. Absolutely true. Absolutely true. Hey, Flexen says Sil's cutting deep. You know, man, Flexen. That's why it's truth, justice, and big Sills. Truth hurts, man. Lying is easy. Lying is easy. Makes everyone feel good. You know, when you lie to somebody, it makes you feel better. You're not going knee deep into it. You know what I'm saying? Respect is the result of patience and understanding. The team has no patience and does not understand the game, which is why they view the players as plug and play. They do not cultivate respect. To some extent. Let's be honest, the competition in the 70s and 90s, only 4 teams in that era, all the talent from no salary cap. Yeah, well, that's called hitting on your draft picks. Nick and Howard are on that. Prince, come on. Hey, bang, bang, Philadelphia. Well, that's why some teams knew what they were doing in the draft and some teams didn't know what they were doing in the draft. You see what the salary cap has done? It stopped organizations that were really good at the draft from being consistent. And what it did was it created parity so that the shitty teams got moved to the top of the draft and made the league more viable and more parity in it. Because you're right. The Dolphins used to get it right. Just think of the teams that got it right. The Raiders got it right. The Steelers got it right. The Cowboys got it right. To some extent, the Bengals got it right early. They went to 2 Super Bowls. Let's see. Who else back in that day? Minnesota got it right. The Giants, they got it right. Those were teams that all were drafting well. Then you had the Cardinals. You had the shitty Jets. You know, the Rams drafted well too, but not like the Cowboys and Steelers. The Bengals went to 2 Super Bowls, my friend. The Bengals have been to more Super Bowls than actually the Jets have been. And they have been to, let's see, as many Super Bowls as the Bucks. I think so. Okay. Kenny Anderson era, Bengals were very good. They were. I'm not talking great, but they were good in drafting. Paul Brown had put a nice system together, especially when he got the football team. They were a winning team right away when they got that team. I think either in 68 or 69. 49ers, man. I think they put that salary cap in place because of the 49ers' massive success. That 49ers 84 team, 85 team, their second team could have beat 95% of the teams in the National Football League. They never missed on draft picks. I mean, it didn't come till later on when the fraud of known as Carmen Policy, who pretended that he was the guy who built the Niners and not John McVay and Ed DeBartolo and Bill Walsh. Those were the guys that actually put the foundations together on the 49er dynasty. It wasn't Policy, and it wasn't those guys. Those guys cherry-picked off it. Carmen Policy is a modern-day version of Howie Roseman. He benefited off the Andy Reid era and what Andy Reid put in place. The 49ers, man, they were sensational at picking and drafting. Seals, didn't Al Davis want Chuck Noll as the head coach at 69? I think it came down between him and John Madden, but then he wanted to stay in-house, Kyle. Remember something, too. John Madden was the youngest coach ever hired at 32. I think it was 32. He may have been 36 when he was hired to become the head football coach of the Raiders. Mainly Jerry Jones and the Cowboys stood in pause ever since 96 when the salary cap was invented. That's what I'm saying. Okay. Here, I would say this to you. One of the things also you got to remember, the greatest talent evaluator in National Football League, or one of them, between Chuck Noll and Don Shula, Jimmy Johnson's one of them. Coach Johnson, what he did in 5 years, Tom Landry did in 30. He won 2 Super Bowls in 5 years, led to another one, a third. He did that in 5 years. Took Landry 30 to build the Cowboys. Now they went to numerous Super Bowls, but they ran into the Steeler dynasty at the time. Sills, was Eskin charged with anything? Not a fan of Eskin, no. Daniel, no. I'm not talking about, hey, you don't get fired in radio for breaking laws. You get fired for your conduct or something you say on the air. I know people who have DUIs that keep their job. You don't get fired for that. You get fired for inappropriate conduct on premises somewhere. That's why I you know what? Unless someone's driving me, and I rarely do it, I'll have a beer or so, but I don't get hammered at places. You never see a beer in my hand. Like when I went to King of Prussia, I didn't have a beer. I had an iced tea. I don't know. I don't act like that. That's right, 11. 2 things, man. Sexual harassment and driving intoxicated will not be ever anything on my watch. That's not happening. Now, if I'm in a hotel, Big Sills might get drunk on the elevator on his way up to his room. I might be pushing the wrong buttons. Okay, I might get off on the wrong floor here or there because I've done that. But hey, driving in a car with alcohol in me, absolutely never happened. Never happening. Bob Brown, Steve Dumig. Hey, you know what that guy used to do, Bob? Dumig used to call me at my home at 3:30 in the morning. You're a disgrace to the WDAE. The way you act, the way you sound, the way you talk. I go, have another beer, Steve. You fucking drunk. The guy since passed on. They asked me what I thought about it passing on a couple of years ago. You know what I said? You know, man, I really got nothing to say. Nothing. Feel for his wife. She's a nice lady. What about him? I could care less. I could care less. What do you think? Because somebody passes, I'm going to change my tune? Not here, Goot. Not here, dude. Oh, no, he was a real good guy. I don't think so. Don't you love those guys? Guy passes away, he changes his tune, and you're like, you regret it immediately. You got to thank every nemesis. That's why I didn't talk shit on him. When they called me when he passed away, I was like, hey, man, feel for his wife. Okay? That's right. Bad luck to talk shit on the dead. I'm not. Hey, each his own. Did Jimmy Johnson recruit Terry Bradshaw to Louisiana Tech? That'll have to check because I know he got a coaching job there. I thought it was a GA job, though, when he went to Tech. Okay? Absolutely unrelated. Who was better, Ray Lewis or Taylor? Two completely. How about this? Ray Lewis is the greatest middle linebacker in the history of the National Football League. Lawrence Taylor is the greatest defensive football player that's ever lived. I saw that Kyrie Jackson. Sad story. I think he was a Bama and Oregon guy. Always hard when we lose one of the brotherhood. And by the way, guys out late. So sometimes the pelt's on the wall for you, man. Ask Jerome. It's just on the wall. There's nothing to do about it. It's just what it is. Eric Andelsack, hit by a truck, weed eating his front lawn next to his mailbox in Thibodaux, Louisiana. Accidents happen, man. It's just, he's out at 3 a.m. I don't care if he was out at 6 p.m. Things happen. And there's no correlation to being out at 3 a.m. during a holiday prior to going and getting ready for camp when you're out with your boys, having a good time on the 4th of July weekend. Most fireworks end at 1 or 2. Had a couple shots somewhere. Got in the car, we're driving home. It's 2:33. Come on, man. Don't make it sound like athletes are infants. They're just like you and me. Happens. Shit happens. It's what it is. You don't legislate anything. Hey, if you're driving around and you're hammered and you kill somebody, that's a different conversation. You're a passenger in a car, and hey, you got if you don't like the driver and he's hammered, you can always get out of the car. I showed you that thing on the back of my NFL Players Association card. Every single one of us, even retired players, can always call for a cab or an Uber, and the NFLPA will pick it up for nothing. It's on the back of my card. I have my wallet down here, but I've showed it to you before. If I was ever drunk at a place, I just called this number, and they'll come pick me up. NFLPA picks it up. Right? I bet it on. You know what I want to do? Before we get to Xander at the bottom, actually, I think I'm going to do those camp things at the bottom here with Xander. Then I'm going to turn around and do them at 4:30 also with Big Sil's random thoughts for the Eagles 2 weeks out to camp. 14 days. Okay? 14 days. I don't use Uber Eats. My daughter uses that. Okay? My daughter uses that. She uses the Uber Eats. When we started the show, I wanted all of you to realize when I said that all of the quarterbacks that you have had since 2000 have all gone through this. Okay? They have all gone through this. Something I heard too, I was listening to Xander, and I think Jeff Kerr was on today, and I was listening to John McMullen. They were talking about the Eagle defense. The Eagle defense is not going to look any different. It's going to be the same. There's going to be no difference. Hey, Sills, why do you think the Eagles only have one Super Bowl with having some great talent come through this team? Should the Eagles have been a dynasty? Great question. Yeah. Let's take a look at this. Let's take a look at this for a second. Who's the longest tenured coach that Jeffrey Lurie has had? Andy Reid, right? Okay. He probably didn't know what he was doing when he owned the team. Okay. After that, how many years did Doug Peterson last? 5? 5 years? Does that sound right? How many years did Chip last? 4? How many years how about this? Do you think Nick Sirianni is going to be the head football coach 5 years from now, win or lose? I don't. Even with a resume, probably that will, at least regular season wise, be better than both Chip and Doug. You don't really think that Nick is going to be the head coach? You think he serves past 5 years? No way. No way. Then they're not going to let a guy sit in the building and take victory laps for the organization. Remember something, the further you get removed from Andy, the more it looks like Jeffrey Lurie and how he built this so-called organization. They had nothing to do with it. The owner did, but Howie had nothing to do with it. Howie was a benefactor from Andy and Joe Banner. And the one thing Howie does poorly is develop quarterbacks. They pay him. They don't know how to coach him. Here's Wentz. Here's Howie's. Get this. By the way, God forbid Hurts goes through the same trajectory. Here was Carson Wentz. Boom. Here's Jalen. Not like this, but because here's Carson Wentz. Here's Jalen. Not so much. There. What if it goes like this? He's right here now. He's he's on the other side of the mountain now. He ain't still climbing. Nobody would suggest that he's still climbing the mountain. That's only a projection. You're only hoping he's climbing the mountain. His seasons have gone like this. Those are facts. That's a fact. It's not a dramatic. It's not dramatic like that. Nick knows his place. He doesn't take victory laps. Yes. Jalen, you know why he doesn't take victory laps? He's not allowed to. He does a really good job at managing Howie. How about this? Every press conference has this in it. Man, Howie really does a really great job. Howie and his people are thorough. They find the right guys, Yeah, assistant coach is wise too. We're really going to do a lot of good things. By the way, if that were me, my quarterback had told the press in Philly that he didn't know what my job was, I would have fucking went off on him. I would have fucking went off on him. Okay? Went off on him. Nick did a great job by keeping his poise. He did a great job. Wouldn't you have gone off? Right? Would have gone off. I just 11-6 with only four plays and a garbage secondary. We made a mistake hiring incompetent coordinators, and we fixed that. Nothing but greatness ahead. You don't know you fixed that, Twiz. You're assuming that. Correct. You're assuming that. Okay? Hey, you know what? You can hire a great doctor, but if he doesn't fit in the operating room with the people around him, it doesn't matter how good he is. If that thing doesn't plug into the players and the people that are in the locker room, it doesn't matter how good your coaches are. If you don't connect, hey, so wait a minute. Let me get this right. Hey, Twiz, question for you. Do you believe that Vic Fangio is a good coach? Twiz, do you believe Vic's a good coach? Twiz, do you think that Vic Fangio is a good coach? Do all of you think he is? You think he's a good one? I've heard skepticism like this before, and yet, with hard work, you get the job done. Prince goes, I do. Okay. A good coordinator. Solid. Yes. Okay. What happened in Miami? What happened in Miami? He came up with the scheme that everyone is using. Prince, what happened in Miami? Injuries? Didn't sound like that to me when the players are talking the way they are. And I'm not giving them a pass either, but they had a sack record. There was some success. Players all bitched that this guy didn't know what he was doing. What happened? He had Jalen Ramsey. He had that other corner on the other side. Didn't work there, though, but it'll work in Philly, right? Miami set the franchise record in sacks. Then what happened, Daniel? Why did the coach in the organization want to move on? And many of the people in the organization, especially down in South Florida, are saying he just didn't fit in. If he was so successful, why didn't they want him back? Players didn't buy in, says Prince. Okay. Miami soft. Could be. Okay. Hey, Philly, you want to talk about soft? How about getting crushed by the Bucks and giving 31 points up to a shitty Buck offense who scored 9 points the week before to Carolina? You want to talk soft? That's soft. Miami got exposed to good teams. Hold on. I love Miami. Learn from any failure. Well, geez, I hope so. He's been in the league 45 years. Because Fangio has a mindset like you, and that's not McDaniel's atmosphere. That's the point, Daniel. That's the point. I completely agree. It's a mindset. See, the Eagles are not going to be gauged by their success this year. They're going to be gauged this year by how they can dig themselves out of trouble once trouble hits. In 22, they had no trouble. In 23, they hit a roadblock and they couldn't fix it. Will these two coaches be able to fix a problem? No one knows. I don't know. And will the players be able to buy in that they know what they're doing? Hey, everybody talks really great in pajamas. Vic failed in Miami. You'll say, he failed? Well, players didn't like him. He didn't like the players, it seems. He didn't like the culture. The head coach and him didn't seem to get eye to eye. Now, Vic Fangio has an advantage because in 22 he was in the building. That's a huge advantage. Not saying, hey, by the way, I'm down the line on this. I'm not either way here. I'm just telling you, before you say that this is going to work, his last stop, he was theoretically pushed out. And they did break the sack record. But the players, Sills, Miami guys, you heard him. I agree with you. His last two jobs he had, outside of being a consultant in Philly, he was fired. Coach of the Broncos and coordinator with the Dolphins. Do I think he's a solid DC? I do. Do I think that he's a no shit guy? I do. Completely do. Seals, the Eagles are not contemplating a new scheme that the Dolphins were not willing to buy into. Well, Prince, shit, they broke the sack record in Miami. They did something right. They've had some legendary defenses down there with some legendary players. Kim Bocamper, Jason Taylor. They've had a bunch of really good football players down there. Bob Baumgartner. I mean, and they broke a sack record. Wasn't like they sucked too bad. And by the way, Brian Johnson coordinated the shit out of him when they came to Philly. I think if Eagle DC job wasn't open, Fangio would still be in Miami. I don't know about that because I don't think Vic really likes that personality down there. As a matter of fact, I think you got to have a special appetite to coach with Coach McDaniels. Hey, I'm not suggesting to you that doesn't look like a new type of environment to be around. You know, the guy shows up in one of those little box cars, the box. He's got a Hello Kitty backpack on. You know, he's running away. I mean, he does some really weird things, but when it comes to looking at some of his offensive skill set players, they're always open. The quarterback passed for more yards than any quarterback last year, and that's a guy that doesn't have a big arm. Brian Johnson got carried by our talent. His play calling sucked. Oh, I see. So he beat Josh Allen, Dak Prescott, Kirk Cousins, Baker Mayfield, Patrick Mahomes. And then when you took the job away from him, your team imploded. Okay. So wait a minute. He loses to Purdy and Dak. He split with the Cowboys, so that's not awful. That's kind of normal. The only real bad blemish on his resume last year was what? The Niner game. So he loses to Purdy. Team went to the Super Bowl too. And he beat the other participant in the Super Bowl, Mahomes, correct? He wasn't the coordinator in Seattle. He wasn't good in Denver, and the Dolphins defense was getting torched just like our defense, and the Dolphins cannot win big games. Hey, didn't the Dolphins put up 70 on that Denver Bronco defense? They put up 70 on them. Pretty much with the guys that Vic had drafted, right? Is that right? No, I don't think they'd put 70 up with Vic being the coordinator. But it's interesting take that you think, okay, right? Could make the argument we lost the Super Bowl because Vic was helping out. I don't know. When you're a consultant like that, you're on the sidelines, dude. You're not really in the huddle so much. Those consulting guys, I mean, I'm not putting that on him. That was an organizational thing, man. Jonathan Gannon was out house hunting. He was not focused at his job. And you had to be completely focused against Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes, and he wasn't. It cost you because you had inexperienced coaches. I'm not saying Gannon's not good, but he's inexperienced. He was consulting the offense, not the defense. Why do you think he was consulting the offense? Because he was going against, most notably, the defenses because he was a defensive coordinator on the offensive side. I think that's pretty standard. I'm not going to bring an offensive assistant coach in to be a consultant to my offensive coordinator. It defeats the purpose. I'm going to bring in a defensive coordinator for my offensive coordinator so that they can bang things off of one another. You don't bring two coordinators in because then you got a problem in the building with voices. I mean, that's why Vic was on the offensive side. Vic was on the offensive side because you don't want to have any problems with your coordinator. Okay. Xander's been watching this for years. I wonder what his take is on this.